On behalf of Taylor's University's School of Communication, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you today. Thank you for taking your time off to join us on this very beautiful Monday morning. We are proud to have partnered once again with the Malaysian Multimedia Development Corporation, otherwise known as MDEC, to celebrate this year's Big Data Week. Okay. For your information, Big Data Week is an international festival that celebrates information and data analytics throughout 40 over countries worldwide. Malaysia is also host to this event, and Taylor's University's School of Communication is more than happy to bring you today's forum entitled Big Data and the Malaysian Experience in conjunction with Big Data Week of 2015. And we will hope that you will find the forum to be very insightful and engaging. So to kickstart this morning's forum, we are pleased to have the Honorable Dean of School of Communication, Ms. Josephine Tan, to deliver the welcome address. Please, Ms. Jo.
All right, very good morning to our guest of honor, Mr. Kabarulai, Head of the Startup and Entrepreneurship Ecosystem, Malaysian Multimedia Development Corporation. Esteemed speakers, Ms. Sutapa Bhattacharya from Leo Bernard, and Prof. Sharul Azman Muhammad Noah from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And also together with us we have Ms. Sandra Henchet from Big Data Malaysia, respected academics, and our beloved students. The School of Communication is proud to host for the third time forum on big data and how it influences our life, especially in the field of communication. Last year, the theme we introduced was on how big data makes sense in journalism. This year, we want to explore more in public relations and research, hence the speakers and topics, which will be shared later. Our theme focuses on the Malaysian and regional experience, where our students are exposed to its growth here. We aim to bring more interest in big data, which is the trend of finding patterns in data that are vast and not easily enumerated in conventional practices. Marketers are able to foresee consumer demand through a cross-section of society through data available in clouds and manual repositories, which has to be gathered and analyzed. Such practice can provide managers to track over time, understand consumer trends in terms of consumption and needs. Big data sets required skills in analytics, which we hope our speakers will shed light to our aspiring students. Donald Ballard and James Steele, winners of 2 Pulitzer Prizes, were famous for their book America, What Went Wrong. They had toiled over 2 years with over 100,000 documents to come up with a 9-part series that exposed how public and corporate greed had affected millions of American lives. Big data is also convenient for citizens to bring about policy changes based on such findings. These are just the tip of the iceberg. I will leave the rest for our guest speakers to expound details from their studies and work to all of us today. Before I close my speech, allow me to thank MDEC for continuously engaging with Taylor School of Communication in this global festival where concurrently hundreds of activities are taking place in over 40 cities. In fact, I was very glad. I just had a very short exchange with Jun just now, that he told me right after his speech, he would have to rush back for a very important meeting representing our country, Malaysia, together with other parts of the world, to come together to exchange more information, more opinions, and also interest in the field of big data, to see how Malaysia can play a greater role in contributing to the growth in this area. And I'm so proud to hear that, because Malaysia is playing a very knowing that Malaysia is taking the challenge to play a great role in contributing ideas, that makes me proud, because we at this part of the world, I believe, also have good brains here, and we also have very rich knowledge, particularly data gathered around this corner of this part of the world. I think it's just as important for the other part of the world to have insights from the data that they have gathered and shared. So I think it's a very important meeting, Mr. Mohidran. So he will have to excuse himself right after his speech, and I truly understand that. Okay, and very glad that he took his time to come over to share with us in spite of such an important meeting that he has to rush for, and that makes all of us proud. Okay, and so we would like to applaud the sharing of expertise from our esteemed guest speakers who were highly committed to engage with our students today. So I would like to also thank the Big Data Committee, comprising of lecturers, for your untiring efforts in organizing this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jo. We are also grateful to have our guest of honor with us today. He is indeed a representative from our partner, MDEC itself. Now I would like to invite Mr. Muhundan Kamarapulai, the head of startup and entrepreneurship ecosystem at MDEC, to deliver the opening speech.
Very good morning, Madam Josephine Tan, Dean, distinguished speakers, lecturers, and fantastic students here. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I just want to say one fantastic story, right, or maybe rather a fantastic thing, which is Taylor's University, your Big Data event, is actually the first event that's happening for this week for Malaysia. So yeah, Taylor's really rocks. Give you guys a round of applause. I noticed that a big chunk of the audience here are students, so please bear with me with some boring stuff that I'm going to share with you guys. But I'm sure it'll be fantastic, it'll be interesting for you, because like what Madam Josephine has just shared, there are a lot of interesting things that's happening within the big data things, right? You'll probably be wondering, some of you are from the communication area, so you'll probably be also interested to see how you can further your career in this area. And I'm sure there's going to be a very interesting discussion after this. So yeah, I'm glad to see Taylor University has once again taken the lead to bring greater awareness and understanding of big data development in the field of communication in Malaysia by organizing and hosting the Big Data and the Malaysian Experience Forum. I'm also happy to be able to share some of my thoughts in this area, especially in the topic of data journalism. Big data or big data analytics, I guess big data analytics sounds a little bit more sexier, does it? BDA has opened up a plethora of possibilities for journalists to release new types of stories, present complex information to readers through infographics and various forms of visualization. Right? Now look at the stories that's coming out today. Look at how SPA positions a lot of information. Those days when the government announces on budget, you just see a whole list of things, right? And nobody's going to read them. Right? Probably you think it's not relevant to you, or probably you just look at, okay, where's education? Maybe I want to see there's some extra stuff, goodies that I can get. But look at how Star and other publications are positioning those information today. Front page, you see all them in pictures, right? Data today doesn't come just in the form of text. It comes in many different forms, and we look at from the pictures, videos, and a lot more other different formats. You guys are probably familiar with that. How do you make all these things into one structure, put them in one structure, and make sense out of that, right? At the end, you want to communicate this out to the key people, to the key stakeholders that you have. How do you do that, right? So this new form of journalism, popularly referred to data journalism, is an additional to traditional journalism, and is becoming an essential part of journalistic work. So ladies and gentlemen, data journalism is a heavy responsibility as well, right? As we must ensure ethical and quality journalism in the era of big data. The huge volume of data, the large variety of data, and the high velocity of data must be treated with care and respect. For example, just because we find a correlation between two or more data sets, it doesn't prove that they are meaningfully related to one another. I'm not sure you guys have heard of the Google flu trends prediction. You know, some time back, Google came up with, based on all the researches that they, based on all the searches that people have on flu, they actually came up with a simple understanding of analytics. And they say that it's going to be a disaster for US. All right? So just because people are searching for flu symptoms doesn't necessarily mean that they have it or are going to get it. Right? Correlation does not imply causation. So that is a critical component as well. Even the big boys in tech don't get it right. Google is supposed to be the king of data. But just because you have data doesn't mean you can make sense of it. So ladies and gentlemen, today's forum is in line with our focus in championing MDEC's vision, or rather Malaysia's vision, to be a BDA hub in the ASEAN region. So we want to take Malaysia to the next level. We can't do it alone. Obviously, we need everyone's support here, and you guys are so relevant to what we're trying to do. We need to ensure that BDA adoption goes beyond the rhetoric, goes beyond the wait and see attitude. We need to make sure that it lands and becomes real for Malaysia, so that we can fully leverage on what this technology or this plan can bring for all of us. MDEC is taking on the national thought leadership position on spurring BDA demands and building a holistic BDA ecosystem. Last year we developed a set of strategic recommendations, or we call them imperatives. I guess it sounds a bit more cool, to advance the BDA industry. The first imperative is talent development. So it's smack into what you guys like, right? To address the shortage of data scientist professionals in the country by upskilling our current workforce and working with universities to develop undergrad and postgrad data science curriculum. The second recommendation is in open innovation, collaboration between MDEC and BDA experts from public and private sectors to develop national high-impact BDA solutions and scale these solutions to benefit the economy, government, and society. This is the kind of area that I'm directly involved in. I'm so excited about this. Today we are forcing the government, okay, quote unquote, we're encouraging the government to share more data, right? As you know, there are a lot of data which are sort of tagged as open data. Open data means they can actually be shared with public, right? They actually have legislations for that. And then we are encouraging government to open up more of this data. For example, your transportation data, right? You want to know how frequent the buses come, taxis, who are the ones who's been registered. You've been hearing some of this now. You can download some apps where you can sort of verify the taxi driver. And all this information could actually be shared to a certain level. So what I'm doing is actually trying to get the government to open up more data. So more startups, entrepreneurs who want to make use of this data, you may have a cool idea, or you probably be having a lot of problems, right? For example, transportation. I'm sure you guys take buses, cabs, and whatever not. You feel like, why can't the government do this? Or why can't the government do that? So what do you need? Why wait for the government to do it? Why can't you guys do it? Today with the technology that's available, anyone could actually code. Or you can always get a friend to code and you can actually be the subject matter expert. These things are happening today. So with a lot of government data coming out, what can happen today is that young startups, right, could actually sort of work on those data and try to make money out of it. Right? The code name is monetization. Right? It means you can make money out of it, and you guys can become the next entrepreneur. in this region, be the next My Taxi, for example. All right, that's just one part of it. Right? Now the third imperative is open data, which is all making public data broadly accessible and usable by human machines. So I just shared that with you. And I think, I'm going to end my talk here. I want to make it short and exciting. I'm sure there are a lot more interesting things going to happen after this. So do go to our website, or just go to MDEC's website, and also the Big Data website. You can actually find a lot of the activities that's happening this week. Tomorrow we're actually starting off our Big Data conference, a 2-day conference at Sunway Convention Center, where there are a lot of things that's going to be discussed. Is FOC. But from the latest information I got, I think we were targeting about 1,000 people to register. We already have about 2,000 plus people who have registered. That shows great interest in this area. Even half of them come, it's already a full house. So we do hope we can catch some of you there as well, right? So thanks again, thanks for inviting me. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Mo, for the enlightening speech, and thank you for your time as well. Time for me to introduce our lineup of speakers for today's forum. Our first speaker will be none other than Ms. Sutapa Bhattacharya, the Head of Strategy and Planning at Leo Burnett, Malaysia. Her presentation will be then followed by Professor Shahrul Azman Muhammad Noah, the Head of Knowledge Technology Research Group at University Kebangsaan Malaysia Center for Artificial Intelligence. And our last speaker of the day will none other be than Big Data Malaysia's very own organizer and researcher, Ms. Sandra Henchard. Now I would like to pass the stage to our moderator of the day, Ms. Jyoti Gangadharan, a lecturer specializing in journalism at School of Communication.
Thank you for the good wishes. Long time I didn't hear that. Okay, now I will just, before we start, we'll have all our 3 speakers to present, and after that there will be a Q&A session where you can ask all your questions. Especially my students, I'll be eyeing you. Okay, and this session is also live streamed. So our friends or our members from Big Data Week, they are able to view and watch this live. Yeah? Okay, the first speaker is Ms. Sutapa Bhattacharya. She has completed her Masters in Business Administration from Institute of Business Management, India, and post-graduation from Wharton School of Business in Pennsylvania. She has a career spanning more than 20 years, starting in marketing with Imami Marketing, moving on to with Nielsen Research, and finally to advertising, first with Grey Advertising, and then for 7 years at J. Walter Thompson, taking on assignments across the country, working with clients in Delhi, Calcutta, in both urban and rural environment. In 2004, Ms. Bhattacharya has joined Leo Burnett Advertising in Kuala Lumpur. She's the head, as you all know. She was informed earlier, as strategy and knowledge and planning as well, the head of it, and responsible for consumer insights that can lead to meaningful and effective communication and brand strategy formulation. She has a strong business understanding in coming up with communication solutions for business problems, which our marketing and PR students will be interested. She has also been an FA's winner for successive years and won the award for Planner of the Year for Southeast Asia in 2013 and was the gold winner for Brand Consultancy of the Year in 2014. Okay, so that is her background, and her title is Big Data and Asilama. Very interesting. I'm sure you'll be interested to find out, and how it plays a big role in our lives. Briefly, what she is going to let us know is big data is a bugbear, very frightening to some, a distant possibility that's yet to make its presence felt, while to others it's just some piece of research to be used by analysts. The truth is, wherever big data lies today, it has immense potential to touch our everyday lives, to change our lives for the better in more ways than we can imagine. In fact, Ms. Sutapa said, data can be just data, or data can help humans to make humankind better. Let us welcome Ms. Uttapa Bhattacharya.
So you all know the topic of big data and nasi lemak. So everyone know what nasi lemak is?
Yep.
Sure? Have it every day? What is big data? That's not here. So you might be wondering, we've got real experts over here, sitting here, but why am I here? From Leo Bennett, we're supposed to be advertising, communication, etc., right? The truth is, big data is big data. At the end of the day, clients come to us and ask us the solutions. What do we do with this? What do we do with that? They have marketing problems, PR problems, and that's when they come to us. And we need to understand big data just as much as everybody else. Actually, you need to understand big data, which is why we're here today. Everyone is talking about big data as if it's something new that they discovered, it never existed. But that's not really true, is it? Data has been around for the longest time. Data everywhere is what we see, right? In fact, my clients and companies like banks and retailers, Aeon for example, they've over the longest time had lots of data. The problem is they didn't know what to do with their data. Just now Mr. Momo was talking about data making sense, having meaning. And that I think is the crux of the matter, that people don't know how to make sense of it. Actually, let's not have it so darker. This is better. Okay. So, just a few words about the current state of where we are today, right? There's a huge potential for big data in the next 5 years, which are coming up soon. If you look at it, there's going to be strong growth in the next 5 years. And initially, North America and Europe is where 85% of the data lie. So a lot of action is going to be happening there. But at the same time, Asia Pacific, as you know, is a growing market. So more and more clients, more and more companies are looking to grow through big data. Key verticals driving demand for big data analytics generally are finance, services, retail, telecom, healthcare, manufacturing, and I'll give you some examples of those. My whole idea here today is to not just, I got the technical experts to tell you about big data, but what I want to do is actually show you the potential of big data and what it means in marketing, what it means in real life, what it means in our lives, right? The major problem, as Mr. Momo just pointed out a little earlier, was we don't have enough people. And I tell you this from our own industry experience. We are looking for data scientists, we're looking for data planners, and we find them, we'll take them. So, you know what the queue is, right guys? Want a job, you're looking. Come to me after this talk, okay? So just a brief introduction to big data. What is it all about, right? Very simple description. Big data relates to rapidly growing structured and unstructured databases with size beyond the ability of conventional database tools to store, manage, and analyze them. As I said before, data has already existed. We had traditional analytics, we had small data sets, etc. Where big data is different is in the sheer size of the data and the complexity, the intelligence, and the speed of big data. There are three dimensions to big data. One, the sheer volume of data. Two, the variety of sources of big data. The number of sources that it comes from. That's the second part of it. And third is the velocity. The flow of information that is coming. And why is that happening? And of course the final V, which is the three V's: volume, variety, velocity, and the final one, of course, is value, which is what Mr. Moho was talking about earlier. How do I monetize and make value from this data? There's lots of data, but how do I make value? So I was talking about the huge velocity and the speed velocity of data today. Given the number of platforms, look at that. Every minute, this is the number of data going through. Just look at that. 600 plus YouTube videos on YouTube, 1,500 plus blog posts, 400,000 plus tweets on Twitter. Imagine the volume of data coming in through the system. How do you make sense of that, right? And that is why the challenge. Just a few examples, for example, how do people use big data, just to make you a little bit interested. Satellite images can help monitor and analyze troop movements in terms of defense. Think about it, you're the government, you're trying to analyze defense. You can analyze troop movements. You can figure out where a flood is about to happen. You can find out from cloud patterns or where forest fires are about to happen. Video analysis systems can monitor sensitive or valuable facility and tell you potential threats and risks and dangers in real time and alert authorities. Let's just look at the global landscape and some of the trends, just to give you an idea of big data, where it's going. If you look at the worldwide big data and analytics, businesses are directing significantly larger amounts of resources. In fact, I think the last study showed 64% of companies have actually pledged and are moving resources to data analytics tools and solutions. And the worldwide spending is actually going to increase. The good news for most of you who are prospects in the job market out there, there is supposed to be about 4.4 million IT jobs coming up in the future. And it forms a very significant part of ICT services, projected revenues of so much. So as you can see, this is a big industry with big potential, with many number of jobs. But the thing is, how do we do this and what effect does it have? Where are we today in Malaysia? If you look in terms of maturity, I think Mr. Moho used the term BDA, we are somewhere in the takeoff stage. If you look at this, the starters, we're in the starters, somewhere in between. We've just taken off, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia. Midstream are Korea, Taiwan, China, and the leaders are Australia, Hong Kong. That's where we are right now, starting off. So it's good. In a way, it's a potential, because we can build the future, just as Josephine is talking about. So what are the different sectors being affected, do you think? Okay. I just told you some answers. Everyone is sleeping, right? Should I give you a clue? Who likes shopping? So the industry is retail, right? Okay, another one. Who likes making calls? So the industry is telco, right? Don't sleep when I talk. Everyone stay awake. Okay, so I told you about these are the key sectors which have high potential and have already started with big data, right? So financial services, how are they using it? You know, we handle one insurance company and one bank, Maybank and AIA. Can you imagine, Maybank has 8 million customers. 8 million customers, and suppose each person has 2 or 3 products at the bank. Can you imagine the amount of data that they have on the customer? Amount of data. If they could use that data, and we know they have the data, but they don't know how to make sense of the data, and that's what Maybank with most companies. If they could make use, they could identify customer segments. They could understand what customers are looking for. They could design their products accordingly, messages accordingly, and therefore build more customer loyalty. More and more banks are facing this problem. People are not loyal. They go to whoever gives the lowest discount, lowest price. They can track trading pattern analysis, risk calculation. Let's look at telco clients. What are telco clients doing? Telcos are really challenged. Why? Because of the switching. People churn, the high churn rate. People don't stay loyal to telcos, right? They move from one telco to the other. Particularly now when you can keep the same number, they keep moving. With this data, what can they do? Again, they can identify, how can I reduce the churn? How can I give people what they want? Now, do you see a recurring theme in all I'm telling you? At the end of the day, it's all about what people need, what people want. Identifying patterns, identifying needs. It goes back to people. Retail. Both brick and mortar and online are looking for more understanding of real-time analytics on terms of purchase behavior. When are they buying? What are they buying? And how can I segment the customers to understand? Maybe there are some people who buy only during the end of the month. Maybe there are some people who buy only during the beginning of the month. What would I do then? Tell me, what do you think I'd do? If I know there are certain people who buy towards the beginning of the month, what would I do? I would send them messages. If I knew what they tend to buy, I would send messages about those and give them discounts on those products. Do you see where it's all going? I would also think it makes sense. If I look at manufacturing, now this is something that Mr. Mutu was talking about. It's always not about marketing and offering messages and offering product offerings. Sometimes it's also about identifying problems. If I can know in terms of demand forecasting, I would know that maybe there are certain items that I have in my inventory which are too much. It helps me inventory management and therefore reduces my costs. Or for example, public sector, just potential pipeline. You know, when you go through traffic, what do you think? Oh my God, the traffic is awful. Just now, Mr. Muhu mentioned, why can't the government do something about this? Actually, you can. Waste management, you can. Using big data, you can actually foresee these things, or you can even foresee, potential economic events. Healthcare players are looking more and more at big data, next generation sequencing, mapping, the genomics, and it's a correlation between treatment and outcomes. One of the biggest issues that hospitals have, particularly in the Western countries, is people stay on in hospitals, and it's expensive. How do I make sure that people don't keep returning to hospitals, don't keep on taking up space when other people should be coming in? And this is another one. How do I make sure that I give them the right treatment, I get the right outcomes? So I think by this time you know, why big data? Why do we need big data? Let me just give you an idea. You guys, many of you have not started working yet, but when you go out there in the world, you'll realize that a lot is really, really challenging today. I started working 25 years ago, and when I did, things were simpler, times were simpler. I give my age away, right, Joe? It's an increasing complex customer. All of you are more complicated than I can tell you. Because I do a lot of research on young people. People today are more complex because they have more information at their disposal. Okay? So I'm not talking one way. You have different needs, different desires, and different concerns. Therefore, an increasingly complex customer. On the other hand, the number of competitions has grown. Look at the number. Before we had how many banks? Now we have how many banks? You had how many number of eateries? Now you have so many number of eateries. Everything in terms of competition has grown, which means if I'm a company or a brand, I'm really under pressure. Thirdly, increasing cost of marketing. Therefore, pressure on margins. The more competition, the more I need to market harder, the more I need to think harder, which means, again, pressure on margins, right? So those are the challenges. On the other hand, companies do see an opportunity. What's the opportunity they see? The whole data that is there in front of them, with them. All they need to know is how to mine that data, how to make sense of the data, how to correlate the different forms and streams of data to make sense. There's a systems in place to do that now, not just the data, but now there's systems to make it happen. And there are platforms to gain that data. So what is the role of big data? Okay, I have the data, I know what the opportunity is. Now what do I do with it? What we usually do, and I'm saying it from a very marketing communication perspective probably, I identify motivations, behaviors, preferences, insights. What do people look for? What will make people change their behavior? What are their concerns? How can I overcome their concerns? I can identify customer segments. There are some people who possibly like blue cars. Some people who like, phones that sing to them. There could be all kinds of people. How do I identify customer segments and then plan my offering according to their needs and concerns? On the other hand, as I gave an example of manufacturing, I can also identify issues, problems, find them out, alert the authorities before it happens. In other words, the benefits of big data are this: solutions, treatments, resolution. It could be treatment for patients, it could be solutions for manufacturing, resolution of problems. It gives me targeted, relevant offers that drive action, because now I know who you are, I know what you're like. I will not give the same message to you as I would give to you, because you would want something different. You would want something different. And only when I give you something that you want, would you actually do something about it, you would drive action. In other words, what it leads to is two things. You'll probably hear the word better business. Of course, because businesses will be giving target offerings, so therefore it will be taken up, therefore people will take action, they will buy, and of course, margin should go up. But is that the only thing that happens? If I were to do better traffic management, better waste management, give you what you want, isn't that also better for people? Right? Everything that we do in business, ideally, should address better for business, better for people. Yes? Ideally it should. And it can. Because in other words, what happens is, why is it better for people? You would get higher satisfaction, higher loyalty. So So this is how it works. There are different types of analysis that helps you to get to that point. Over time, you can do all these different types of analysis. So there's descriptive analytics, which is about what is happening right now, when did it happen, what happened, etc. You have predictive analytics, which tells you what might happen as a result. Remember the examples I gave you, economic events, floods, etc. It's predictive. Then finally, you have prescriptive analytics, which is more advanced. Why did it happen? When did it happen again? How can we stop it from happening? What can we do about it? So I'm going to take you straight into the different uses of big data. Because I feel there's a lot of talk about big data, but I don't think there's enough examples of what it means. I just want to give you a sense of what it means. Now, there are 8 key reasons how big data might be used. And later on, you might want to ask some of your panel members, is that the only reasons? But anyway, optimized funnel conversion. Everyone know what that means? What's a funnel? It's not the funnel where I pour the liquid at. When you go through a decision-making or buying system, what happens? You start from awareness, then move into consideration, then move into choice. Do I buy this? So, for example, if I am buying a washing machine, my washing machine breaks down. I have to buy a washing machine. So I'm thinking about it now. Then I may go to the store, I make a few choices, I decide, etc. That's the entire funnel. So finally I buy, maybe because I don't buy this brand I thought about, but because the sales guy was so good. That's the funnel. Behavior analytics, looking at people's behavior and figuring out what I can do to change that, push that behavior towards my brand. Customer segmentation, predictive support, market basket analysis, optimization, predict security threats, fraud detection, industry specific. Now, that makes a lot of sense, right? No, obviously not. No examples. So let me show you some examples. So this is where big data analytics allows companies to track leads through the entire sales conversion process, from a click on an AdWord to the final transaction, in order to uncover insights on how the conversion process can be improved. So what it does is it identifies in the process where are the points I can actually make a difference. I can perhaps push out a message, or I can make the clicking easier, or I can help the navigation. Example, T-Mobile. Who's heard of T-Mobile? No one's heard of T-Mobile. Thank you. T-Mobile is a telco and uses multiple indicators such as billing, sentiment analysis. What is sentiment analysis? Anyone know? What is sentiment? Very good. Whether you're happy, sad, remember smiley face, emoticons, angry, sentiment. Using billing figures. What does billing figures gives you? It tells you how much they're paying. Are they heavy users? Are they low users? And sentiment. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they happy with your service? In order to identify customers that can be upgraded to higher quality products, as well as identify those with a high lifetime customer value. So it's simply focused on retaining those customers. More and more companies are beginning to realize that it's very difficult to focus on all customers. They need to identify who are the customers that are the most important, who believes in their brand, who is loyal to their brand, who is spending more, and therefore they work on that. And they will take them through customer value needs across the entire life of a customer chain, how much is coming to. Let's look at Cellcom, closer home. Everyone know Cellcom at least? Yes. Okay, Cellcom adopted a big data solution in order to improve customer retention and boost its market share by improving the marketing campaign process. The company used real-time data to create a personalized campaign for each customer based on which products or offers the customer would most want or need. In other words, what they did is, they created a number of different communication pieces. Send it out to people. From the data they realized which ones were people responding to best, which ones were people not responding to. Maybe one customer likes a certain kind of offer, another one likes another different kind of offer, and therefore you make it so much more targeted and relevant. Let's look at a bank instead. Okay, this is Credem. They use data analytics to predict which financial product or service the customer would appreciate, so you can better target consumers through the sales process. With these insights, the bank increased average revenue by 20% and reduced cost by 9%. Now that is what? I spoke about a fourth B. 3 B's. What were 3 B's? Volume, variety, velocity. Very good. You're paying attention. Velocity, and the fourth one was value. Therefore, there is a value. Reduce cost by 9%, increase revenues by 22%. Only by understanding which products work better for which customers, and using that insight to sell further. Let's look at behavioral analytics and how that works. With access to data on consumer behavior, companies can learn what prompts the customer to stick around longer, as well as learn more about their customers' characteristics and purchasing habits in order to improve marketing efforts and boost profits. MasterCard. MasterCard, has so much data is not fun because they engage with different retailers, etc. They have the behavior, analyze the behavior of customers not only for their own stores, but also thousands of other retailers. So they teamed up with New Sigma to collect and analyze data on shopper behavior and provide the insights it finds to other retailers. In other words, I can even sell my data. Another form of revenue stream. I can collect the data, because imagine, I am MasterCard. I know how Aeon customers, relate. So what do? I can sell the data on Aeon to Aeon, right? And say, Aeon, you know what? This is how MasterCard consumers are using Aeon. Time Warner. Who's heard of Hulu? Netflix? Everyone's heard of this, right? Now they're all eating into who? Eating to people like Time Warner. So what Time Warner did is collected data on how frequently customers tune in, the effect of bandwidth on consumer behavior, customer engagement, peak usage times, in order to improve their service and increase profits. The company also segments its customers based on what they're looking for, what kind of things they view, and the timings. Therefore, they can increase their, and they sell it to the advertisers. So the people who advertise on Time Warner are actually very happy with this data because they know when they can find the right customers. I'm looking for young people, so I can give that data to these people. I'm looking for older customers, and I can sell that data because I have the data. Let's look at Nestle. Close some of them. Now, one of the biggest challenges for most companies has been customer complaints. I mean, social media is a good thing. I'm not so sure how many companies think it's a good thing because they get very affected. One person becomes many voices. And Nestle recently had a big issue. Anyone see the Nestle video? The viral? No? By Greenpeace? The orangutan? I will send it to you. Please share. It's no. Okay. So they have to handle a lot of complaints and grievances. So to better keep track of customer sentiment, what is being said about the company online, Nestle created 24/7 monitoring center to listen to all the conversations about the company and its products on social media. So what does it do? So I listen. So what? I can listen and keep it there. A lot of companies actually, I can tell you this because I work with them, just listen and keep it there. Is that enough? What do you need to do? Respond. Respond. Just like, did you all know that out of 10 people, 8 people are more likely to pass on a bad message? How many people do you think pass on a good experience? 4 or 5, as opposed to the negative. But also, the other thing is, if you talk to that person, address their concerns, it can change. It can change to a good message, and a good word of mouth, and a good brand advocacy. What's an example of that? We used to handle a hotel client, and we noticed, when you go to a hotel, they tell you, room is not ready. What? I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired. Your room is not ready? But then imagine if they say, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Just give us 10 minutes. And when they give you the key, they give you what? An upgraded, a suite. So what are you now? Are you unhappy? Are you angry? No. So that's all what it means. Responding to problems, responding to complaints. And therefore you build customer. After that, you're going to be telling everybody about what a fantastic hotel that was. McDonald's, our very own McDonald's. Who loves McDonald's? FSC, yes, it's my client. Okay. McDonald's really uses a lot of data, and they have a lot of data with them. They use data in every single facet of their business. Whoa. One topic at a time, sorry. So, they improve operations. They look at factors like the design of the drive-thru, information provided in the menu, wait times, size of orders, ordering patterns. Now, you may not have known. Do you think all McDonald's outlets are the same? Are they all the same? How are they different? Sorry, who's that? We talk about Malaysia. It's a Malaysian experience. Okay, you will notice that some are frequented more by young people. You will notice some have more families inside them, right? Some have a drive-thru, right? Each one of those restaurants are designed in a different way to cater to the needs of those customers, okay? So family restaurants will have different kind of menus, different kind of service, they would have hostesses, etc. What they do by doing this is they first improve the customer service, so people are happier. And also, for example, on the menu, the items in the menu will tell you, they figure out which menu items seem to work better than others. And they will change the menu items. Which is why you will see when you go to McDonald's, you don't do the same thing every time, do you? No. Because they change according to what they find in the data. Starbucks. So now, this is Starbucks. Now obviously Starbucks is different from McDonald's. Now do you notice, even though I'm kind of saying the same things, it's slightly different. McDonald's is about the experience. Now look at Starbucks, what it does. It collects data on its customers' purchasing habits in order to send personalized ads and coupon offers to the consumers' mobile phones. It identifies trends indicating whether customers are losing interest in their product and directs offers specifically those customers in order to regenerate interest. Interesting. First of all, it figures out what coffees do you like. What do you like to have with your coffee? And it'll send you personalized coupons on your mobile. You're on the way to somewhere to the office, think, hey, not bad, I want to go get some. Or, if they find people who used to keep coming to my shop are not coming anymore, I send them another offer. Hey, come back. Come back and join us again. Take another coffee. Right? How about customer segmentation? Let's look at Heineken. Working with Google and Facebook, Heineken has access to vast amounts of data about its customers, create real-time personalized marketing messages. Spotify. Everyone know what Spotify is? Yeah, right. What it does is it uses data from user profiles, user playlists, historical data, and then recommends the music, right? Then they combine it with, even if they don't know the users, they will combine the information from millions of users and make recommendations. Nordstrom. What is Nordstrom? Retailer, right? So what they do is collect data from his website, social media, transactions, customer program, to create customized marketing messages for a really good shopping experience. Who is IAG? Who are they? Hoteliers. They have hotels. What do? Again, they find collective extensive data by the customers, provide personalized web experience, so that they can convert. You come online to find out more about the hotel, and I will make sure that I convert you to a user that you come to my hotel. Who's heard of Walmart? Walmart's another retailer, right? What do? Combines public data, social data, internal data to monitor what customers and friends of customers are saying about a particular product online. The retailer uses this data to send targeted messages about the product, to share discount offers. Also uses data analysis to identify the context of an online message. So again, what are all these examples saying to you? You can identify, you can tailor your message, right? And you can send that and you can get people to react. People support. Southwest. Now this is interesting. What would you think I will give you an example of? I thought this was very interesting. This is not about an offer, it's not a marketing message. They use sensor data on their planes in order to identify patterns that indicate a potential malfunction or safety issue. This allows the airline to to address potential problems and make necessary repairs without putting people's lives in danger. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's problem solution. Union Pacific is railroad. It's about rails. What do? Again, use predictive analytics tools such as visual sensors, thermometers, detect imminent problems on the railroad tracks and fix them. They have actually reduced derailments by 75%. So do you see the use of big data? It has so many uses. We don't realize how it affects us, whether on the plane, whether in the shop, whether we're getting a coffee. In every part of our lives, big data exists already and it's playing a role. Closer to home, university. Purdue University uses data to identify any academic behavior issues so that teachers can be notified and you can do something for the student to be successful. Pretty cool, right? This is another one from P&G. What do? They use simulation. Now P&G, everyone's heard of, right? They were like, don't know how, hundreds and hundreds of products. It creates and sorts of 1,000 iterations to design the best design for a disposable diaper. Would you believe? Now I found this very interesting. How many of you do any washing up in the house? Really? Okay, it's quite obvious you don't. But they have done work to figure out when should the fragrance molecules in the dish soap come out at that point of time so you get the right fragrance while washing dishes. Of course, that's a different study altogether. That's a study of sensory means, and senses have a huge role in marketing. You wouldn't imagine. I'll come back to the next lecture, Joey, to talk about that one. Etihad Airways. Anyone traveled by Etihad Airways before? Quite good, huh? Not bad. Better than Qatar. Okay. Now, obviously, Etihad is a fledgling airway. It hasn't started, it's just recently started. So what they have done is, to increase their international presence, they use the data to figure out where are people going, what are the most attractive destinations, so therefore they can maximize their revenue. Apparently MA is also trying to do the same. Coca-Cola. Yes, what were the over? Good. Now look at Coke, what it does. Now I was thinking about inventory management, but the example is very different. How do they ensure consistent taste of their orange drink with algorithm? So what they do is incorporate satellite imagery, crop yields, what do people want in the particular orange taste, what kind of orange taste, and they make sure it's the same orange taste and how the juice should be blended. So much science for a Coke or an orange drink. How do you predict security threats? Robobank, this is a bank. Robobank analyzes criminal activities in ATMs. So this is another interesting thing. Did you read about this before? How do you know? You know a lot of crimes happen where? Not bank robberies, right? Those only happen in movies. It happens at ATMs, right? So they did a research on ATMs to figure out, analyze data to find what factors increase the risk of a robbery. Guess what they were? Being near a highway, makes sense? Can run away, right? Immediately. Weather conditions, one is out the road, and the seasons, all affect the risk of a security threat. So now guys, all of you know where not to go to the ATM, huh? Fraud detection. This is Xeon's Bank. Xeon's Bank uses data analytics to detect anomalies across channels that indicate potential fraud. The fraud team receives data from 140 sources, some in real time to monitor activities such that the customer makes a mobile banking transaction at the same time as the branch transaction. Now actually banks face a lot of these situations. Fraud is very, very huge for banks all the time. And it's also about money, right? So the risks are very high. Industry specific. And let me just go straight into it. Everyone heard of kayak? Anyone want kayak? They actually give you the best prices for flights, right? So they use big data analytics to create a predictive model. Now remember I talked about descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. Exactly, prescriptive. So this is predictive. To tell users that the price for a particular flight will go up or down the next week. The system uses 1 billion search queries to find the cheapest flights, as well as popular destinations, the busiest airports. constantly improve by tracking the flights to see if the predictions are correct. So not only do they predict, but then they go and check on the predictions to see if their predictions are correct, and then fix it. Aurora Healthcare. I talked about healthcare a little earlier. Aurora collects internal as well as national data in order to create a benchmark for healthcare quality. It also analyzes data on groups of patients with similar medical conditions to reveal trends in the diseases and to identify the right candidates for medical research. Finally, the real-time data analysis allows Aurora to predict and improve patient outcomes, and so far has reduced readmissions by 10%. I talked about having the right treatment for the right patient, and therefore the people are coming back. It's reduced by 10%. But they also do a lot of cross-tabulation big data analysis to figure out different types of patients, what are the trends, what is working, and how can you see the trends of diseases. Catalyst, IT, is my last example, I think. Okay, I found this very interesting. One of the biggest issues that most companies are facing today is retention. People don't stay. People move on. So what this company did, they built a program to screen job candidates based on how the candidate completes a survey. Interesting, huh? So here are all these thousands of candidates. They're given a survey and they figure out how they look at the data and how they complete it. Connects thousands of data points, such as how the candidate approaches difficult situation to determine how the candidate works. Now, one of the issues in hiring people is that we can't really tell what you're like. You all seem wonderful when you come. We're wonderful. We will do this, we will do that. But you really can't tell. And this one actually tries to analyze people and hires to see which one works. So far, the company has reduced turnover of their people by 15%. So I think what I was trying to give to you, I hope this was useful. I wanted to give you a sense of the different uses of big data. Bring it to life for you in everyday life, whether it's a bank, an ATM, food outlet, shopping outlet. You see the pervasiveness of big data all over the place. But I'd like to leave you with just one thought. Keep one thought. At the end of the day, big data is nothing. And I say nothing in front of everybody here. If it does not meaningful and promise a better life for people. You will, at the end of the day, you still need to give the information, the data to people, to the companies, right? It has to make sense. It has to make meaning. It has to make things better. Okay, thank you very much.
For the very interesting and insightful information about how data about ourselves are being used by companies to understand our needs. Yeah, and you have seen from the slides the number of information that is circulating at this very minute and how it is all being calculated and recorded for a variety of purposes. Right. Next, Professor Sharul Azman Muhammad Noor. He has received his Bachelor of Science with Honours in Mathematics from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and then his Masters in Science and doctoral degrees in Information Studies from the University of Sheffield, United Kingdom. His research interests include information retrieval and ontology with special emphasis on semantic researching, searching and recommender systems. He'll explain, I think, what he's doing from his study. He has published more than 150 research articles in these areas. Prof. Sharul was elected as a research fellow at the Institute for Pure and Applied Mathematics at the University of California in Los Angeles in the 2007 program on mathematics. And he has also been involved in various research grants such as the Multimedia Development Corporation as well, MSc Multimedia Super Corridor. There's some students leaving quietly. Alright. And from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, Technofund Grant Scheme. Professor Sharul is currently a member of the Persatuan Capaian Maklumat dan Pengurusan Pengetahuan on Information, International Association for Ontology and its Applications, and the IEEE Computer Science Society Association. Professor Sharul's title is Big Unstructured Data, Topics, Event and Entities Detection in Huge Crime News Data. So we all read news every day, He is studying about news, especially crime news that normally makes front pages of news portals or newspapers. He will detail us about what he gathered from his crime news since way back to 1993 and select tools, what kind of tools he has selected to track pattern and understand the vast amount of data collected over the years. He will discuss how these clusters of data is recorded and a pattern is achieved. Let us welcome Professor Sharul.
Assalamualaikum and good morning. A bit nervous to me because it's the first time I speak in front of communication students. Usually I speak in front of computer scientists and information technologists. So it's a bit hard for me to tailor my speech with the requirements of the communication students. But anyway, I'll discuss about some of my research, past research. Actually, my area was in database and knowledge-based systems back in 1994 and 1998. And then I moved into the area of data warehousing. And now I'm more focusing on search engines, Google, Bing, and so on. Right? So I study about algorithms, techniques, how we can improve searching, basically for related to context and searching. But today I'll discuss about my research regarding news, particularly crime news, because it's a big data week. From computer science perspective, the technology is not very much different, but we are giving new terms. We are given new terms, new terminologies. But the techniques, the data mining, the predictive analytics, recommendation system, and so on, those are all based on conventional but with new enhancement. Right. The first presenter talked about what are big data just now. Okay, so it's about volume, velocity, and variety. So I don't really touch more about this. Okay, you all know about big data, but the main things about big data is how we can integrate your own data with the open data. That's the most important. Relying on your own data alone is not enough. You need to integrate with other open data, customer relationship data, and so on. Then you make your decisions or your opinions for something more meaningful. Now, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, we don't see a lot of data in the internet especially. But that is keep on changing. For example, IBM predicts there are about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data generated each day. And 90% of data in the world is less than 2 years old. Based on this 2.5 quintillion data, they are less than 2 years old. And why we have so lot of data now? Because it's based on the scientific sensors. Okay, the first we have to talk about data from sensors, imageries, data, and so on. There's a lot of data there. Point of sale data, social media just mentioned, the Facebook, Twitter, what else? Flickr, YouTube, and so on. Those are social media data. There's a lot of data being written every day, and we need to analyze the data. And of course, internet independent websites. The third thing we'll talk about data journalism, but I just touch a bit of data journalism. As far as I'm concerned, there is no specification what is data journalism. So we can just simply say journalism done with data. Maybe you are a journalist, you need to do with data to assist your writing and so on. Some people say that data journalism is about using programming to automate the process of gathering and combining information from local government, police, and other civil sources. This is very common in the European country where they all gather data from the police, from the government, to analyze what situation is and so on. As the first presented about the crime spotting, predictive analytics for crime and so on. Another example is using software to find connection between hundreds of thousands of documents. This is what happened in the Telegraph. Just a quick look on the. Sorry. Oh. Okay. So this is the Daily Telegraph web page, okay, where they keep track on MP's expenses. Okay, and they preview in their website in order for reader to view it. Another example is, do you know Hans Rosling? Do you know who Hans Rosling is? For example, Hans Rosling here talk about how you can visualize world poverty. Do you know Hans Rosling? No? Medical doctors and statisticians. Do you watch that? Technology, entertainment, design? Yes or no? Okay, good. So Hans Rosling presented a very impressive presentation how you can visualize this big data about poverty. Yeah, just a quick one. I managed to catch some. So this is about, I think, Malaysian's mortality. So the gap minus shows how actually the mortality keep on reducing and the years goes on. Okay, so as a journalist, you can really analyze patterns or whatsoever pattern you can extract from that information. And there are other examples here. For example, David McCandless spoke the world in numbers, such as the world biggest data breaches. It shows here, just to visualize the type of data breaches happening in the world. Okay, so from the point of view when you watch this, you can actually extract information patterns that you can write in order to assist your writing. So when we talk about data, actually there are three types of data. We have structured data, right? Structured data, the semi-structured data, unstructured. Structured means that data which are stored in a very nice way in your formal relational databases where you have the header and the columns and the rows. And you have semi-structured data such as XML, okay, RDF and so on. And you have unstructured data. Okay? But 90% of the data now are in the form of unstructured. We are dealing with 90% data which are unstructured. And this unstructured data actually don't reside on the traditional row and column databases. You just imagine email messages, word processing documents, news articles, web pages, and so on. And as per the project that I mentioned earlier, we are dealing with more than 90% data now, okay, unstructured data. So we need some special mechanism to deal with this unstructured data, because unstructured data is very difficult to handle because there are lots of ambiguities, there are lots of complexities in there. Yeah, so my research will focus on how we are dealing with this unstructured data, especially focusing on crime news retrieval. Yeah. So where does this unstructured data came from? So there's a lot. We have satellite images, the Google satellites and so on, the Google images, scientific data we are generated every day by biochemistry and so on, photographs and videos, just imagine in Flickr, YouTube, we all generate data every day, and radar and so on data. And there are also human-generated data such as text, okay, the email, Twitter and so on, the social media data, okay, the mobile data, your WhatsApp messages, your Telegram messages and so on, and of course the website content. Okay, so this, what we call it, these sources causes increase of number of unstructured data. But the main thing is that analyzing unstructured data is very, very difficult because in order for this unstructured data to be useful, it must be analyzed to extract and expose information that it contains. Okay, so just imagine if you have this Twitter data or this email data, how you want to analyze them, how you want to extract important information, okay, from that email or text. What are the most common way of extracting, analyzing this textual data? Any idea? The most common way. I mean, maybe you see it every day. It's all about, when you want to buy a product, what do? You want to find the review on the product, right? You want to know what people say about this product. So what do you call that? It's all about sentiment analysis. Okay, you want to know the polarity, whether it's a positive sentiment or negative sentiment. I will show later on some examples, okay? Search engines or systems which can assist you, which use this unstructured data to predict the sentiments, whether positive or negative of certain product. So when we deal with this unstructured data, we need to extract who are there, the people, organizations, objects, or even events that unstructured data. Topic analysis means what that data is talking about. For example, if you want to buy a digital camera, what are you looking for? Maybe you're talking about the lens, right? So those are topics. You're talking about the quality of pictures, right? And you're talking about a few other things about the topic regarding digital cameras. And of course, sentiment analysis, what is the view, whether it's positive or negative view about the product. Feature analysis, for example, inherent characteristics that are significant for a particular analytical perspective. For example, land coverage in satellite imagery. Okay? And there are many others analysis that you can perform on this unstructured data. So from the computer science perspective, when we are dealing with structured data, we actually talk about text analytics. Okay, text analytics means that it is the process of analyzing unstructured text, extracting relevant information, and transforming it into structured information that can then be leveraged in various ways. So we're talking about from the computer science or AI view, that these are the techniques that we usually use. For example, data mining. You want to mine the data, get significant information. You need to perform some natural language processing. You know what's natural language processing? It's all about understanding how machine can understand what is being written in the text. Okay? Information retrieval. You want to retrieve the information. That's what Google did for all the huge numbers of documents in the web. Text analytics. Okay, find important information, extract important information. Of course, you want to remove all noise or text which are not relevant to you. Okay? The most simple way, the most simple example when we talk about text analytics is spam detection. How many of you use Gmail? Anybody? Gmail. Gmail is a very good spam detector, right? Do you know the priority inbox in Gmail? Right? Where you push up your favorite email so you can read it first. So those examples actually be the application of this technology. Okay, very impressive. Right, just a quick one on text analytics. Okay, I managed to find this, which is during the Obama and McCain, what do you call it, right before presidency. So this software, this application, just do some very simple keyword spotting, highlighting which are the common terms or words being used by these two candidates. Okay, so it means that you can see whether Obama or McCain like to use negative words or positive words during their campaign. Just simple visualization, but you can extract meaningful patterns from it. Okay. The next one is this. Okay, this is a simple example. This is an email. A complaint from the customer. Okay, you can see here, very short text, but you can extract a lot of information. The information about the customer name, and then we have the email of the customer, relevant airport location and routes. Okay, yeah, the customer talk about the competitor. Okay, sentiment. I had a terrible experience. Those are sentiments. Okay. And key terms for industry, for example, concerning about how you want to upgrade the seat. So just imagine you have a lot of these kind of emails. What can you do? You can do some analytics. It's not very clear, this one. I think Taylor's going to change the message projector. Okay. It's not very clear. Okay? Because here you can see that how we can predict the frequent flyer customer service sentiments. It's more toward negative sentiment about the frequent flyer. And what are the comments that they made? Here you can see this is the probably the organized seat. A lot of comments about that. And then, what are the common route? For example, this example is from SFO to BYS, Boston, San Francisco to Boston. Yeah, but so this kind of information is being extracted from those emails. Then of course it will assist. Okay, for example, there are to make certain arrangement or certain marketing strategy later on. Yeah. So another example here, this is just a good advice. You want to buy something, you go to this social mention. Okay? It's available on the web, social mentions. For example, here I try to search for Microsoft Surface. Okay? I want to buy Microsoft Surface, although I'm using iPad now. I'm trying to look for other possibilities. Microsoft Surface. Now, social mention here will extract all information from blogs and Twitters we discuss about Microsoft Surface. It provides some sentiments. You have strengths, sentiments, passion, and reach there. For example, strength, it talks about the brand. Okay, what is the likelihood that your brand is being discussed on social media? So you want to buy Microsoft Surface, you want to know what are people talk about Microsoft Surface. And then you have the sentiment, which is the ratio of mentions that are generally positive to those that are generally negative. So in this case, 7 out of 8 opinions are positive on Microsoft Surface. Then you can know, okay, it's a good information, a good thing to buy this Microsoft Surface. And then there's a thing about reach, how it influences in this product, right? And then you have something about passion. It's a measure of the likelihood that individuals talking about your brand will do so repeatedly. So this information, very simple, but it involves a huge amount of textual data generated every day, extracted from this using these applications, and presented to you in the form of sentiments. Okay, so it means that in the future you want to buy something, you go to the website, look for opinions, what people say about this product, and then maybe you can make your decision whether to buy or not this product. There are other things. We have rank speed here. Rank speed will be able to have what you call it, few sentiments here, what people are talking about, in this case, about friend feed, a website, okay? So you can see what people say about all this, about this website. Right, so now I'm focusing into what, so basically, what we did with unstructured data is all about extracting sentiment, positive and negative values. But if you integrate the sentiment with your own data, you will get very, very meaningful results. Okay? In order for you to make prediction or recommendation and so on. Right. But for me, I would like to know more. We need to know more. We need to focus more on other things. Not only about sentiments, but other things. So I started to focus on news. Okay? So when we talk about news, there's a lot of information in news. We have the categories of news, topics, events, locations, okay, what are involved, and follow information about the news, and as well whether it's local or international news. Just a quick example here. This is a Kenny Ong murder case. I believe you know about this case, right? Okay. So just this one paragraph of news, there are so many information, right? There are so many information. First, of course, we have the title, which is the topic of the news. We have the date of the news. What else? We have person, right? Person. It is just not a person, but it's a victim, right? And you have some temporal information here. And you have a person who are in charge of this case. And then you have what else? We have locations, for example. There's some location there, Bangsa Shopping Complex. So this information are important, especially for people who keep track on this case. Actually, we try to do this project for police report. Okay, but the report is very confidential. Okay, you cannot get the report. So we shift into using the news article. Right. crime news are actually among the most read items in newspaper. And some of the high-profile crime take years to solve with so many news articles. Who know about this Mona Fandi case? No? Mona Fandi case, right? Those who are the same age as me, maybe they know about this Mona Fandi case. But those who are, maybe you are, what the case is all about. It's about the killing of an assassination by the so-called Bomo. Yeah. So, Mona Fandi case, there are so many events. Okay, you can extract so many events from the case. The case, I think, start from 1993 and ended in 2001. So there is huge collection of news we discussed about Mona Fandi. It's all started with the disappearance of this assemblyman. There's one event, and then it's about how this Datin Faida lost a report, another event, and then Afandi and Mona Fandi was arrested. So there's a lot of topics. So actually, in news analytics, we need to extract this topic. Okay, we cannot read all the news at once. Okay, we need to extract the topics and present it to you so they can analyze and they can read whichever topic that they are interested in. Right. So, as you might have known that Malaysian crime rates is increased by 15.74% last year. Okay, it's a bit critical looking at the percentage. Okay, and then newspaper, of course, newspaper keep on reporting some of this crime news, and in fact, it's one of the most pressing problems in society. And then journalists and as well public depend on resources reported by the media, particular news. And then for this news to be meaningful, okay, or for this news to be, what you call it, presentable to users, especially publics, we need to organize this news into an effective way. Okay, of course, it will benefit journalists as well and the publics. Yes. These are some of the applications focused on crimes. For example, this is the Auckland crime spotting, which they visualize which part of the, what you call it, of their location are involved in crime. And here, New York homicide map, okay, which visualize what are the type of crime involved, who are involved in terms of race, ethnicity, and so on in New York. Okay, so it's all about visualizing the content. But this is not about news. This is about report by police and report by public when it comes to New York homicide map. Right. So when we started to deep research in this area, surprisingly, the requirements are very complicated. When we talk of crime, for example, this crime need to be classified into various categories. We have traffic crimes, theft crime, sex crime, and so on. And then we need to extract meaningful entities, okay, such as person, location, organization, date, time, and so on. Okay, and then we need to cluster this crime into topics. For example, we have a lot of crime news. How you want to cluster them into, for example, Nuri Jazin murder, Kenny Hall murder, and so on. Okay, and then we need to cluster our specific topic into various and chronological events. Okay, each topic has their own events. Okay? So we need to do that as well. And then we need to map these entities into some knowledge represented what we call as ontology. Right. Just a quick example here. Yeah. So what we did was we collect all the news from the web. Okay, using a crawler, crawl the web, get all the news, and then we did some classifications where we classify into various topics, various classes, right? Under kidnap, theft, and so on. And then we clustered into topics, right? So for example, we have the Nuri Jazlin, which is depending on, there are a lot of topics there. Okay? That's not enough. That's not enough. Yes, we managed to get a group of documents we discussed about this crime and so on, but we need to get more. We need to extract the events. Okay? For example, in Kenny Hall, That's the first event. There's 17 documents there. And then another events and so on. Okay? So it's a bit complicated because at the end of the day, for carrying on, we need to look at specific events and try to analyze what is actually happening in that particular events. And that we call as events, and those are classes. Okay? Right, so I will not discuss in detail about these techniques, okay? In order to support those kind of requirements, we need to do this kind of text processing, information retrieval kind of things, natural language processing, classification as well as ontology mapping. And these are our proposed applications. Okay, we have the back end there, how we represent the news, how we organize them, and then we create some simple interface whereby public or maybe journalists can browse or look for important information in the applications. Yeah. So these are the tasks that we did. Okay, these are very technical things. Okay. So what we did was each document will go under pre-processing tasks where we need to do the stemming, parsing, okay, those kind of very technical terms. Then we represent documents and we do some document organizations. Okay? And then these are the things that we did for the pre-processing. Right? I will not discuss in detail. And these are how we represent the documents. Okay? So for example here, you have this kind of documents. You use some software to extract the entities, okay, who are the victims, location and so on, and we represented them into very structured manner. Okay? And then in terms of document organizations, we need to organize the documents to various categories. Okay? So in this case, we are using some algorithm for classification, which we call Adams algorithm. And we do some clustering using k-nearest neighbor clustering, okay? And as you know that it is not enough to organize the crime into topics or events. We need to map with entities, okay? Therefore, each of the entities being extracted from the news will be mapped into some meaningful entities. Okay, for example, persons, location, victims, okay, weapon and so on. Right. Yeah, so this is what I call just as ontology. Ontology is a kind of knowledge representations, okay, where we model the crime activities in terms of some knowledge, okay, so that we can easily map the documents into the knowledge and can be used for further analysis. We have this asset ontology. We discussed about the news, okay, where it comes from, okay. What type was it? Is it text, video, and so on? And then we have event ontology, which discuss about specific events. Okay, as I showed you just now, how we actually organize the carry on events into various events, chronological events, and then each of these is being mapped with documents. Okay, so it means that each of the entities extracted from these documents are mapped into these entities. Okay, this is ontology. So that now we have more structured representations of the documents or news articles. Now, so based on that, what can we do with that data? Okay, so what can we do with the data? So this is the interface that we are currently developing, and we keep on developing, keep on improving on it. So first of all, let's say I can type there, for example, missing. So I want to know information news about missing. Okay. Yes, I will get all information about news about missing, right? Okay? And then all others are being mapped into this geolocation, called geotagging, where each of the news is being tagged with maps, right? And then, yes, We can search in a variety of ways, okay? And then I can focus on specific news, read about it. For example, in this case, I click on the Nurul Jazlin news in order to get more information about the news. Okay, so again, it will be arranged nicely in terms of the chronological events, beginning from June, July, August, and so on. So we can see what happened at that particular, when was the news being published, okay, and where it was being, where did the crime happen or the events happen. And then we can, look for specific people who are involved. Okay, then we can see a list of people who are involved in these missing events, and then and then I can focus on specific individuals, look for it and get information about the individuals here. Okay, or you can discuss about the individuals. And then I can see the network there. So let's say now I focus on Nurul Jazlin, and now I want to focus on the network who are involved with Nurul Jazlin, and I get all the connections there. Okay, so you can see that from extracting and processing all the information in the news, you can get very meaningful information there. I was told that when I did this project, I was told that the Malaysian National campaign manager, they said we actually develop this kind of system. It is very internal system. The purpose is actually to track the record of all the entities of Malaysian National. Okay, so they want to know this fellow is linked to whom, who and whom. Okay, very interesting. Okay? And then we can straight away focus into some other things such as the locations. Okay, so I think I mentioned this before, right? And then the locations there. You can see all the location that the crime happens. Click on specific events. You focus on that location of the crime. Okay. And then you can put the details of the crime that happened in that locations. Okay, I click that one. I can see all the, in this case, Socialawati event which happened somewhere in Selangor here. Okay. And then I can straight move into events. Okay, it's not very clear here. Okay. So I focus on something, I can see the event that occurred, and I can see which news discuss a lot on that particular topics. So in this case, for example, during the time that we developed the system, Kenny is the most talked and the most published news at the time. So we have a lot of bubbles, big bubbles we discuss about Kenny. So yes, when I click that one, I can pop up all the screens or the news we discuss about Kenny. Click that one here, which news that I want to read. Okay, and I can close the face. So that's also what I want to talk today. So basically, as a researcher, we try to look into a different perspective. Most of the tasks or product which concern on unstructured text, when it comes to big data, we discuss about sentiment analysis. What sentiment analysis? So in this case, we want to look into a different perspective, whereby we need to analyze more information about this data. And one of the best examples is the crime news retrieval, where you can identify the events, the locations, the weapon being used, the car involved in the crime, and so on. So it is a very complicated processing, complicated process by a hook. For example, in US, they have developed similar kind of application, but it is meant to track cyber war, and they can predict who are the person involved in those spreading, what you call it, false information and so on. And I think last 2 weeks when I visited UITM, actually government are actually looking for applications which track messages or Twitter's messages, Facebook messages, and so on, which may have some elements of terrorism. Okay, so in the for to describe all the way who are involved in spreading those kind of messages. Okay, with that, I come to my. Thank you.
Very interesting. How from data that doesn't make directly any sense, finally it can tell us about how the development of crime stories, which murder stories as well. Especially Mona Fendi, I think my generation now, lecturers all will be able to feel it because someone murdered somebody into 18 pieces, and then you can see a pattern. And after that, Kenny Ong, which I think probably you all will be able to relate and to see how relevant it is, the pattern, the places where the location, maybe it plays a role, who are the people involved. All this data will give immediate understanding, which of course, as you said, it is not easy. If you see it from the way you describe, gathering this data, analyzing it takes time, but it comes out to be very beneficial. And in fact, political parties now are taking up big data kind of study to understand pattern among their own members or thousands of members. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Professor Sharo. Next, we'll have Ms. Sandra Henschart. She's the Big Data and Society researcher with industry, academic and community experience, a key organizer for Big Data Malaysia, which is a community networking group for professionals with interest in all things big data, which I'm also a member of this Big Data group, which Ms. Sandra Henschart has co-founded, including where this includes processing technologies, real-world applications, data visualization to make data more attractive to public, data journalism included, data science and more. Formerly, Sandra was the Asia Pacific lead for custom research at global internet measurement firm Experian Bitwise. She worked with leading blue chip and new media brands to grow their businesses through insights derived from large behavioral data sets. Her commentary has featured prominently in the press across Asia Pacific. Currently, Sandra is affiliated with Swinburne University and is the recipient of an Australian postgraduate award for her doctoral thesis, which investigates social media information use in Malaysia. She is a past panelist at the Melbourne Writers' Festival and fellow of the Oxford Internet Institute Summer Doctoral Program at Oxford University. The topic that Ms. Sandra will present today is empowering journalists with the tools and resources of data journalism. All right?
And every day it was my job to look through this data and find some interesting stories. And I picked up lots of tools and tricks to be able to identify patterns. And I didn't need to learn how to do programming. I've got a little bit of programming skills, but I could actually just use tricks through Excel to actually identify patterns. So that's stuff that you guys can do. So what I'm saying is that data journalism actually requires a multidisciplinary approach. So we've had a computer scientist speak, someone from the marketing world. So it's combining all those different skills and using it for data journalism. There's different skills you need. There's critical analysis skills, some quantitative skills that you need. You need to be critical and above all, sort of creativity, to be able to use your intuition to spot patterns. So how many of you watched Elementary? Seen it? Who's heard of Sherlock Holmes? Probably everyone. So being a data journalist means being a detective. So you're looking through patterns to spot crime. In this episode, he was using a service like Uber. Has anyone used Uber? Or My Taxi? So when you actually catch a taxi, there's quite a lot of information about where you're coming from to where you're going, at the time of day. You're leaving a trace of data about yourself. And in this case, Sherlock was using it to find someone with criminal intent. So these are the three processes that I'd like to cover today about data journalism. The first one is the data collection, data processing, and this stuff can be a little bit boring. Actually, a lot of the work involved in data journalism is actually ensuring that you have a quality data set. Doing data preparation, it takes up a huge amount of time, but it's extremely important. The fun stuff, data visualization, so it's actually not just about making pretty pictures, but actually communicating in an effective manner. And data visualization involves both exploring the data, using it as an investigative tool, as well as communicating to the public. And data narrative, so that's actually drawing stories out of the data, so storytelling, bringing the data to life. And the way that you do that, are you telling the story in a fair way? And that takes a bit of understanding the maths behind it, the numbers, and ensuring that you're representing it fairly. So I've had two excellent presentations about the big data environment. So big data is not just about big volumes, it's actually about different varieties of data. So we're seeing a lot more social data emerge on online use, which is really fantastic from a humanities and communication perspective. Sensor data, the amount of information that you generate by using your mobile phone, if you use a Fitbit, those wearables, you're generating health information about yourself. The Internet of Things and smart cities, this is a huge area for analytics. So we're going to see cities that run themselves based on machine information. We're seeing a big move towards open data, so a lot of governments around the world are opening up their data sets so they can actually see how they can save money through providing data to the public, and then the public can actually use that data for monetizable applications. One of the big challenges will be access to proprietary data sets, so data sets that are owned by companies. So for example, if you'd like to access Twitter data over a historical time period, you have to pay for it. So it actually makes it really difficult for researchers who are on low budgets to be able to access that type of data. So that's a big challenge going forward. And finally, in this environment, we have the issue of skills. So there's a digital divide in science, technology, engineering and math skills. So in terms of education, that's where we're going to see the biggest growth in terms of bringing those skills into humanities and communications departments. So recently we had a visitor to Malaysia, the Open Data Institute Director, Richard Sterling, and he made a very interesting comment. He said, often you hear the quote that data is the new oil or data is gold. So the fantastic thing about data, the raw material, unlike oil or trees or any other natural resource, the more you use it, the more valuable it becomes. So it's just a fantastic resource. So if you're looking for data, public data sets, Google's your friend. You could just look for, this is compiled by a group called Datalicious on various public data sets. So various government data sets at the top. I guess the thing is when you're using public data sets, just to ensure how reliable is the source, has the data been weighted properly if you're using census data. So think about the quality, has it been verified, again, how clean is the data and so forth. And there's, as I said, fantastic resources. There's one called Crunchbase, which provides information on different startup companies. So there's a lot of resources out there for you. So I'll just share a few examples from Australia. They run a GovHack competition. So they actually have a category for data journalism, and the one that won the award last year, this person developed an app for finding the rise of non-English speaking languages in Sydney. If you look on the website, if you scroll over the various areas, it will show you which languages are on the rise. So it's a very interesting study in terms of understanding different ethnic groups and languages spoken in communities. And the person who developed this actually had to use quite a lot of programming tools to create this graphical interface, and the person had to actually manipulate a lot of the ABS census data to get it in a format to actually show. But the reason why it won is that it's very interactive, it's very nice visuals. I can easily imagine a project in Malaysia on a similar theme, if you look at all the different languages that are spoken in KL, and understanding that on a street level provides very interesting insights. The second example, now the reason I'm showing this is because it's not actually that technically difficult. All the person did was you enter in your name, your gender, and then it gives back to you the equivalent stats for an Indigenous Aboriginal Australian. So, it provides the equivalent life expectancy stats. So, very simple interface, but quite a powerful message in terms of what it means to the average Australian, someone else who belongs to a disadvantaged community. And again, you could do something like this for, say, the Orang Asli community in Malaysia. So, a very powerful example. So, Unfortunately, our MDEC colleague has left, but I just wanted to congratulate what MDEC's doing in terms of providing government data sets to the public. So there's a fantastic resource called data.gov.my. So MDEC's worked with the Open Data Institute, and they've actually established open data champions. And these open data champions from various ministries, their job is to actually put their data up onto this website. And that's no mean feat, because there's a lot of concern by the government when they release data, how it's actually going to be used by the public, whether it's going to be represented fairly or not. So, I mean, it's really a great cultural change in actually releasing this data. So Malaysia used to be, it was unranked in the open data rankings done by the World Bank. And I think through this initiative, they're now 41, so that's a really great achievement. So some people who have used the data, the MDEC ran Big Data App Challenge. The top one was a Dengue index that was done by Multimedia University and Teradata. So it's an index to actually predict high-risk areas of dengue using weather and geo data. There's actually quite a lot of interest in dengue applications. The second prize went to Asia Pacific University, who did a water management prediction app. And I believe they've just won some further funding to do flood predictions and crisis management through an app. So we're going to see a lot more of these initiatives come through. Okay, so if you go to the data.gov.my, you can actually scroll through all the various ministries, Ministry of Finance, Education, Transport, and go through. And these data sets are in Excel and CSV format, so they're machine readable. So, as I said, use the skills that you have, the research questions that are for your projects, and use those skills and come to these sites and help that guide which data sets to use. So I know a lot of data journalism is about human stories, so actually getting access to social data can be quite tricky, but there's actually a range of proprietary social analytics tools as well as free ones. I'll just go over some of these briefly. So GNIT, they're actually the reseller for Twitter data, so if you're after historical data and you have some funds, you could approach GNIT. There's Polytweet. Polytweet is a Malaysian social media analytics company, and they actually presented last year at Taylor's. Kamal's there, and he's a really approachable guy. Radian 6 is probably the premium social analytics tool. There's Social Bakers, so if you're looking for stats on Facebook, the top brands, and the top people to follow in Malaysia, you can look on Social Bakers, and then there's Topsy, which is, if you're wanting some data from Twitter, you can actually use Topsy. Okay, so this is maybe some of the boring stuff. Collecting data, if you can learn SQL, simple query language, that's quite a fairly easy language to learn to extract data from various databases. And if you just do a short course in it, you can learn it. R, which is a statistical language, a little bit more complex but handy if you've got a stats background. And Python, which is a natural processing language. Again, one of the easiest programming languages that you can use, and you could enroll in a day course with PyAcademy, and you could have enough skills to start analysing some big data. So again, you've got to go out there and get whatever skills you need, just enroll in a short course, learn some stuff online, and this will help you to get the data that you need. Again, data cleaning, not a fun process, and there's lots of tools like this Data Wrangler tool by Stanford. You put in messy data, it gives back some clean data for you. So there's tools to help you. So data visualization, this is the stuff that I really enjoy, having an arts background. So there's two processes in data visualization. The first is investigating the data using, highlighting it through colours or different sizes, and where are different trends. And then there's the explanation, so bringing data to life, communicating it, and it's really been enabled by this increasing access to public data. So visualization and big data, when you're looking for the needle in the haystack, having a visualization tool can really help you. Often it's a quantitative process, and then you can point to the interesting data that you can use for more qualitative analysis. So using quantitative and qualitative processes through visualization. So effective communication, like a piece of writing, data visualization should be clear and concise. really, when you put together a visualisation, the first thing, can you tell what the story is from the visualisation straight away? If you can't, then perhaps it's too complicated or too messy, so you should rethink your choices. So it's all about communication. So some sort of poor practices: too much information distortion, too much variety, confusing display choices. So anything that you've learned in a social science class applies to data visualisation. So these ones are poor examples. So there's a pie chart, a radian chart, and a 3D tree map. So they might seem like the sexy visualisation choice, but sometimes it's just better to use a bar chart or a line chart just to convey the key information. And there's two tools that I can recommend to humanities scholars. The first one's Tableau. That's sort of that's a table format. It's producing beautiful visualizations. So the guy behind it is at Pixar, and it's just sort of drag and drop. You can connect it to big data sources. There's some free options. It's a really nice tool. The other one's Gephi, which is really good if you're doing network analysis. So if you're trying to track between different figures on Twitter and you want to look at communication links, Gephi is really good, and that's a free tool. So if you're looking for some ideas, you can go to the Tableau public gallery, and they actually list visualizations into different categories. So there's health, social media, education, and you can actually look through their database if you're looking for some ideas for visualization. So in this one, we've got one on looking at hashtags during the World Cup on Twitter. There's some examples with health, and there's some visualizations with Facebook and government requests. Heaps of examples. If you look for ideas, have a look on there. Okay, and these are the network maps that are created from Gephi. The first one is created by Polytech, so looking at Anwar Abraham. I think this was generated during the last election. And the one on the right, Kevin Rudd, it's an Australian Gephi map. Again, looking at the politicians and the size of the links between the nodes, the edges and the nodes, gives an indication of communication direction. So they can be very useful to study. So analytical approaches. Okay, you don't always have to do heavy-duty statistics. You can use very simple maths to identify patterns and trends. So some metrics that I've used, and as an analyst in the past, I've just looked at year-on-year percentage increases. You can do indexing, so that's actually just using things on a percentage scale. Correlations, they're often built into tools such as R and Python, so you don't actually calculate it by hand, as long as you understand when it's appropriate to use. And again, as the index speaker starts with, correlation is not equal to causation. It's fairly accessible in things like gap analysis. So very simple mathematical procedures that you can use to spot trends and unusual activity for further investigation. And here, Excel's actually become quite visual these days. You can use the conditional formatting tool to look for greater than, less than. It's got bar charts, arrows, colours, all to signify which data you should look at when you're trying to compare at different levels of the data set. So the final part, looking at data narratives, this is telling the stories from the data. And again, when you're creating a narrative out of data, it's about what's your research question, what are you trying to find out? Are you representing the data fairly? Are there any skews, political skews, numerical skews? Could you tell a different story if you had more data? So, trying to, what are the assumptions that you've had and challenging those? Are your inferences and arguments based on evidence? So when you're telling a story, you're making an argument. So you don't over-argue or make it too weak, but it's about couching the argument correctly. You're thinking about who is your audience. So is it a scientific audience or it's the general public? It's really catering the story to your audience. Okay, so I'm going to share a case study and sort of go through the process of starting with the research question through to analysis, data collection, analysis, and narrative. And I actually used some public global media data to look at the aviation disasters from last year. So I wanted to know what the impact was of MH370, 17 and QZ 80501 on global geopolitical relationships. It's quite a sort of a broad research question. So I had three different time periods to analyse, and I was looking at global data in relation to these instances. And I used a data source called GDAL. It's actually a free data source. It's a graphical data source. It provides geopolitical coding on top of news events. It's quite massive. There's 400 million geopoints, 250 million rows, 59 fields, 35 years of press releases on a daily basis. So it's actually a fantastic resource. It's actually free for you to use. And what I used, I went to Google BigQuery, and I used some SQL to actually extract the data that I needed. This is where the big data component comes in. And Google BigQuery is actually free. I used their codebook to understand what all the data columns meant. So that's an important part of reading public data sources, actually understanding and using their support materials so that you're reinterpreting the data appropriately. Okay, so it's a little bit not that clear on this projector, but what I used was this this red to green scale was called the Goldstein scale, and it's actually a measure of geopolitical instability. So if it's red, it means the incident created a politically insecure situation. If it's green, it's a fairly benign situation. And these are global press mentions that mentioned Malaysia over the course of 2014, so that's a whole year's worth of data. So as you would expect, during the three incidences, press mentions related to Malaysia spiked dramatically. The first one was the Beijing flight, and it's green, so it was fairly benign implications in terms of China-Malaysia relationships. The second one, over the Ukraine, that's actually a red line, and it actually showed that there was actually quite dangerous situation that was created out of that accident. And the third one was the Surabaya to Singapore flight, and that was green, so not a lot of political fallout based on this analysis. And again, it's only based on public press mentions, so I can't be too definitive in what I say about what actually happened. Okay, so this is unfortunately blanked out the projector, but what this chart shows is two global maps of two time periods. There's the July and the March time periods. So the bigger the circle, that's the more press mentions that were generated. If it's a green circle, that means it was a fairly benign press mentions, political reaction. If it's red, it was negative. So I don't know what the numbers wrong, MH17 July generated more press releases indicating greater political instability than MH370. So if you think back to when the flight crashed in the Ukraine, a lot of tensions between Russia occurred as a result of that incident. And that implicated other countries. So here you look at the United States. I've done a crosstab with the press mentions. So these red bars relate to the United States and the Ukraine. So there's actually a global fallout from the second incident. So if I wanted to go into the press releases in more details, I can actually look at the text of the press releases and do a word cloud. It's not very scientific, but it can actually give you clues as to what was going on at that time. So I compared March versus July in terms of how the press releases were analysed and coded by GDAL. So the terms, and these were press releases mentioning the US. During the first incidents, they were fairly benign, make a visit, investigate. But during the Ukraine incident, it changed to use conventional military force. So having the word analysis gives you more of an indication of actually what was going on. So I had the benefit of knowing what happened during those incidences to help guide my analysis. But say if I had no idea and I just used this approach, then this would give me an indication of what was going on, and I can use it as a tool to investigate further. And I can't say that it definitely caused those relationships, but it just, it gives me a clue and a place to start with in terms of more detailed investigation with phone calls and a more qualitative approach. So what's next? Okay, so how to start data journalism? It's, again, I think this year is about not just about the talk, but let's do it. So when you start, what's your research question? What are the societal issues concerned in crime and so forth? What data resources do you have? So what are the sort of global public data sources that you can, and there's a lot available. What tools will you use? There's lots of free tools. And how will you visualise the information? So if you go to look at the Guardian data blog, there's some really excellent examples of data journalism presentation. How will you identify patterns? What are you looking for? What techniques will you use? And what is the story that you're going to tell? Who is your audience? This is a list of free tools: Data Wrangler, Open Refine, R Project. So again, you can just go on and have a look for various tools that can help you. And just some sort of final thoughts. One, keep it simple. You don't have to do. It doesn't have to be overly complex. It's about telling a clear story. Use the skills that you already have, the critical thinking skills that you've acquired whilst being a university student. Just focus on getting the skills that you need. You don't have to learn, heavy computational analysis. You can just, if you want to learn R, Python, invest the time into learning the actual skills that you need. And finally, no one is an expert. So data journalism is new to everyone. I went to an Australian university who were teaching data journalism. They're using Excel to teach it, and people of very different backgrounds are coming forward to come together, bring their skills to this new emerging field. Questions? Feel free to email me, and please join our Facebook Big Data Malaysia group if you want to be involved in the community of Big Data Malaysia. Thank you.
Has given you more feedback on how data from being very messy to become more impactful as well. So now I will call our honourable speakers to come forward to take any questions from the floor. Yeah? Can you please come forward? Okay, maybe I will start. Like Professor Sharu, I'm interested why you went into crime news per se. Yeah? That was my first thing. There are many things we studied. Like for example, I do teach journalism, and crime news also we discuss. But for you to see an understanding, maybe you can share with us.
Yeah, actually, it all started with the research on topic detection and tracking. How we actually, because in computer science we need to look at the problem in a more generalized perspective. So actually, we are more focused on topic detection and tracking. So when we talk about topic detection and tracking, crime is the most sophisticated because there's a lot of topics there. And there's a lot of chronological events. So as a result, we decided to use crime as our case study when it comes to topic tracking. And but when we go further into this area, because there's a lot of influence from the police as well. Because police, for example, in Scotland and in UK, we have developed a similar application. Can detect crime patterns, but based on the police report. And when a new crime happens, they can predict who are the method of crime, and then they can easily track who are involved in the crime. So that caused me and my team to go further into the crime detection analysis.
Thank you. Anyone would like to ask any questions? Yeah? As Sandra was saying, no one is an expert, neither am I. Yeah? So we're all learning as well. And if there are things that we want to ask, even Ms. Sutapa, she was explaining about how Starbucks are using big data just to buy coffee. Very interesting, right? From data analysis, they are having people to do that. Yeah? Yes, please, Sandra.
With your crime data, did you have any police reports that you used, or was it?
Yeah,
it's quite hard to understand.
We have a data on police report, but those are based on general crime. I mean the small case of crime, for example, like what you call it, traffic crime. But it's high profile crime, very difficult from the police report. So very difficult because confidential. It's very confidential what's going on. So at the end, we end up using the news. But of course, news, we don't actually contain accurate information about the crime. There's a lot of ingredients and other things.
I'm interested. One thing I would like to know is how do you obtain the data? Is it from available resources online, or you have to really go through thousands of documents?
So the main source from Bernama. That is our main source. Means that we develop a simple crawler. We can crawl the Bernama database and collect all the news. But not all the news, but we need to filter. Only the crime is being crawled and being collected. Apart from that, we crawl all the news. Now, Photosat, news or the Star, News, and so on. They all publish their news every day online. So we need a crawler, what we call a crawler, to crawl this website and extract and download all the news into our server. Okay? That's what Google did. When they developed the search engine, they developed a crawler, a spider called Scooter to roam over the web, collect all documents, download to their server. But of course, Google has more powerful spider.
But Sandra, how about your studies, and are they on public records online or?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, with the public data sets, if you've been going to data.gov.my, and like the one when I did the Malaysian case study, I actually they allowed me to input the dates that I wanted, specify which country that I wanted, and then it returned the file to me in a fairly large Excel format. When that became too narrow because Excel can only be all so much information, that's when I used Google BigQuery to do an SQL query to get the data range. But as I said, with data.gov.my, it provides data in Excel format, so it's very easy to go through and find what you need and pull it down. So, yeah, there's a lot of resources available.
Yeah, I think mine is slightly different because I work with industries. So a lot of my work is actually confidential to me, and it's not from open source actually. It's not open data. It is from the industry itself. I mean, they are collecting data, but I think where mine starts is, the journey starts quite early actually, because I need to find out what is the problem that the company is facing. From that problem, I actually have to start putting in the cues. For example, Aeon, retailer. I need to figure out if I want to increase my sales, or if I know that some people are dropping out, I have to identify who they are. So on my website itself, I have to try to develop the kind of communication and the tools to make sure they capture that information, capture that data. So a lot of what we do actually has to start, even starting in terms of what is the data I'm looking for, putting that data system into place, then analyzing that data, and then coming up with a solution for that. So therefore, suppose it's about, like for example, you saw the Starbucks, people dropping out, not coming to Starbucks anymore. I'd actually start off with, first of all, does my tool in my website or on my database have that kind of tool to actually explore the fact that people are dropping out? Then I kind of put something there. If they're dropping out, I can track it. Then with that data, I figure out, kind of reasons for dropping out. What are the things they used to like? Therefore, I would again craft that messaging or that offering to that person specifically in terms of finding the data for their phone, for numbers, etc. Personalize the content of the message. And then I might even have further on down the line on the journey, in the consumer purchase journey, have more reminders. The person has not come. I track that data. I find that out, and again I try and send them a second time. Do you see what I mean? It's actually quite a process. So a lot of it depends on, when we work with companies and with clients and with brands, you need to understand the business part of it too. What is the business all about? What are the factors that are influencing the purchase? What is influencing the choice of the brand? And then start building in those factors as we go along the journey.
Melissa, want to ask something?
Yes, actually I do. What do you foresee for the future of this big data? Any personal
Generally,
ideas?
yeah? Anyone want to take the question?
Well, about big data, so the things about smart cities, internet things. So now we've got things like Google self-driving cars. So some people say that when you use your Uber data and you're tracking, it's actually creating a map for where they actually start developing the Google self-driving cars. So people probably aren't going to be having their own self-driving car, but there might be services that come out of this sort of big data information. So different groups, things like the wearables. So like those Fitbits I was talking about. The data about older users. If they're sick, there might be an early warning system where it goes to their carers if they're sick. So greater detection. So I guess it's just about cities that sort of run themselves, sort of machine and human data combined going forward. So one of the concerns that we have about digital divides, so who misses out in this world of big data. So you might not have the socioeconomic means to actually benefit from big data, or you might be discriminated against because of the way that an algorithm works. So there's a lot of research going on about the accountability of algorithms and how much how a person might miss out on because an algorithm's being prejudices against them.
If I could just add to that, I'm working on a project right now, which is about a city, a smart city actually. And I think I talked about traffic management, waste control. I mean, in many ways, this should lead to a better world in many ways. Because it means, for example, the flight emergencies, we know in advance, we can stop inventory, investment, we can predict flood, etc. And like, for example, even crime, I suppose, at some point in time we should get to that. However, having said all that, I do think on the other hand, there is an issue of, for example, even when it comes to healthcare, for example, having data on these people means we can give them personalized care and the wearables, or, I can be at home and my mother might be at home, but I can track what she's doing and I can tell her to actually have a medicine at a certain point in time. But somewhere along the line, I think it'll come down to, again, privacy. How much do you really want to share? How much do you really want to share? And if there is a breakdown ever at any point, what would that really mean? So, I mean, right now my father, 78-year-old father, is here in town, from India, and we are having these intellectual conversations as to whether internet and big data is good or bad in the long run for civilizations and society. What does it really mean? Where are we going towards? But for the next 5 years, for your satisfaction, it's definitely going to be around, and I think we should really look forward positively towards it.
Yeah, just a quick one. We are all in the area of big data actually, and the future for big data is bright, very bright. I just want to take note about a comment given by a professor from Australia during a conference in Kuching end of last year, when we asked him about the future of big data. I believe that you know about recommended systems, right? For example, you use Amazon.com or use any of the e-commerce site where you will get recommended of certain product based on what you purchased before or based on what your friends or similar users purchased before. So you will recommend with certain items. So maybe, I don't know, maybe in the future when you enter any mall or supermarkets, straight away your phone started to create some noise, blinking or whatsoever, saying that why do you need to go to that shop because it has some offer which based on what you have purchased before. This is what we call about Internet of Things, right? Internet of Things means that whenever you enter somewhere, your device will start to trigger something, especially in the mall, and then based on the big data information, based on the history of your activities online, purchasing things and your friend and so on, whenever you enter a mall, straight away be recommended which shop you should go. And those information are built from big data. Don't be surprised, okay? If you go deep into Google, Google knows everything about you. Don't be surprised. Yeah. Just imagine, just one case in US where a person committed a crime. I think something to do with rape of a small girl. Google able to extract actually what this person has existed before, 2 or 3 days before the crime occurred. Google even know which website this person went, what information he started collecting and who he has been connecting. So Google is sitting on a gold mine of information. Okay, so that's all. Thank you.
Excuse me, so does that mean there is a higher chance of fraud now, since this information is kind of accessible to certain people?
Is it higher in terms of fraud? Well, you did notice that fraud detection is also part of this. I think there's a lot of information. I think it's a question of privacy again. How much of the information is being let out? How do we secure that information? Because the information is all there. Now, you might say, why has Google got all this information? But they haven't, right? So it's a question of how far they can protect this information, I think. So fraud, I think everyone's working towards a fraud detection. So I'm not so worried about the fraud, but I'm actually more worried about the privacy part of it. That kind of really worries me much more. Because in the wrong hands, it's not a good thing.
It's also about what assumptions surveillance companies like authorities make. So for example, if you're researching bomb-making sites because you're doing a school project on terrorism, doesn't mean you want to make a bomb. So if a government agency was looking at your website traffic and said, oh, this person's going to a lot of bomb sites, you know, how they act on it is of concern because they can't assume what your actual intention is based just on, you know, that information. So that's one area that's of concern in surveillance business area.
Hi, my name is Vijaya. I just have one question for you. I think it's something that a lot of researchers have problems or issues with. How much of data that you collect is actually enough for, let's say you're doing a study and you want to collect some information to get a good picture? How much of information is actually enough? When do you reach saturation is a big question, right? So is it any different with collecting big data?
The hard thing about big data is just having so much data that you don't know what to do with it. So there's, you know, you rely on statistical probability techniques, and you might not need 100% of the population. You might reach a certain level before you can say with enough confidence that, you know, you can make a certain statement. So it's more about getting useful information, again, using the data visualization tools, I said, to sort of go through all the chaff, find the needle in the haystack. So I guess it's, you know, being driven by what's the research question, what are you trying to find, can you make, you know, a fair statement based on the data that you've collected. But again, you've got to be aware, you know, as I said before, you could be making a different narrative if you had more data. So there's a little bit of intuition involved. But again, it's just actually, the challenge is actually getting to useful data from these big data sources.
And coming from, I think, a branding and marketing perspective, I think it really depends on, I think you're right, I mean, the probability, there is a 99% or 98% confidence and you get to that level. But having said, it also depends on what the task is. You know, from your question is a research question. For me, it would be, does it do the job? You know, is it getting, for example, if the idea is to actually increase sales or increase loyalty, does it do that? If it does, then can it have enough information? I always use the cost-benefit analysis, particularly from a company perspective, from a industry perspective. How much cost would it require to get more data, and how much, what's the benefit that I get out of it? So yes, I mean, data is infinite. We can keep on and on and on and on.
Somewhat no end to big data. There's always new understanding, new trends. Yes, one more, please.
I'm looking at the negative perspective of big data. There is an increasing issue of people misusing the data that they've collected, such as some social app or social media like Facebook, where they allow you to actually transfer a certain amount of money to someone else. And what's happening out there is a lot of people are actually posing as some people's family member or friends, and they're saying, oh,
first, just be careful about the information that you do share on social media. So your birthday, I wouldn't put that out in public. Is that what you mean?
No. This hackers actually got the information from your conversation. They actually hacked in the conversation to see this are your friend list, and everybody posts this one.
So when it comes to money, is it?
I mean, imposing as someone based on the data they hacked into the data.
Okay, I'm just going to say two words, common sense. I think it's common sense. I mean, you kind of can tell some people are, the way they're talking or the way it's all the same. And when it comes to money, because I've also got these kind of emails, asking for money, somebody who's a friend, sound exactly genuine. The first thing I do is call up and say, Julie? Really?
Facebook, make your friends, your connections private. Don't expose your networks. So, I mean, okay, so. Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, well, a lot of the sites are moving into HTTPS, so they're using secure encryption. So I guess you just have to be judicial in terms of the websites that you choose to use.
Yes. Now, net neutrality is also popping up here and there. How people want to push for it. Do you think net neutrality will affect big data in any way?
Yeah, so I think we've got iFlix coming into Malaysia. So, and recently Netflix has gone into Australia. So net neutrality is about keeping the highways fair for different content providers. So we're trying not to get telecommunication providers to own the content. So yeah, I mean it's huge in Australia now because Netflix has done a deal with I think one of the ISPs. So the other content providers, the traditional players, are not happy about it because it's sort of contravening the net neutrality. So given all the amount of YouTube content that people want to consume, they want an even level playing field. So net neutrality is very fair for a fair ecosystem.
We'll have one last question. There is. Okay. I think we'll end the session now. Thank you.